What up everyone, Eric Watson here, freelance writer, player of games, writer of words, recorder videos, and tabletop role-playing aficionado. Welcome to the Thursday edition of my bi-weekly behind-the-scenes DM-only livestream Crafting Icewind Down, which I build, write, and prepare for our next session of A Rime of the Frostmaiden. If you're playing characters of All Robin, Frey, Celeste, Edmund, or Thimbleweed, this is not the right stream or day for you, but for the rest of you, welcome. You're okay with the spoilers. We stream our D&D sessions live on YouTube every Friday. Watch all the sessions and reviews here on YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Rogue Watson and join our official Discord server with invite link in the description below. If you would like to support the channel, please check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. For our campaign, we use Roll20. For streaming, I use Open Broadcaster software with Streamlabs. This has been a hell of a week and a hell of a day for me specifically, as I have been scrambling to get my Keys from the Golden Vault review done, which just came out on Tuesday. That should be able to go up for patrons today, fingers crossed, and then publicly for everybody tomorrow. Of course, we've also got the Patreon D&D game tonight, which I have been busy planning for, and of course our usual Rime of the Frostmaiden game, which has been kind of regulated to the back burner at this point, which is going to be on Friday. So I'll spend a lot of my prepping time on Friday as well. So in other words, I get to suddenly shift gears from everything I've been prepping on. I literally have like 4 different Roll20 windows open just in Roll20 alone. Or I always have like 40,000 browser windows open for all the various projects I'm working on and things. But specifically, I have like 4 different Roll20 games open that I'm working on, and my brain is becoming terribly fragmented, minty flavored brain droppings. So we are back talking about Ithrin, and I think we were gonna still cover the Tower of Divination because as where the players are. Hey Stan, I'm glad you have arrived. They are still finishing up the Chain Lightning Stadium, which should take a hot minute for them to finish up there, and then they're gonna cross basically the same area they've already crossed before, which means I don't really plan on throwing another like Nothic encounter at them. I probably will, because I assume they're going to want a short rest, probably. Because I don't... Did they actually short rest following the battle? I'm not sure if they did. Yeah, actually, I think they did. Before they did... After the Tomb Tapper battle, I believe they did short rest. So as long as an hour has passed, I think it's okay to look at doing another encounter. But encounter being they could, you know... do a far realm incursion, which would be, I've got kind of a table set up partially based on the table from Tasha's about the far realm zone and kind of the dangers that can happen there, and you know, tentacles pouring out and various spell effects, basically things that wouldn't take an encounter but are more like a hazard that the players have to deal with while crossing an area. I think would be appropriate. And then once they make it up here, I can run the Iron Golem thing. But the Iron Golem thing I don't have set up necessarily as an encounter either. It's almost just like, oh, hey, by the way, there's this big, you know, patrolling Iron Golem around, like killing anything that moves. It's kind of easily avoidable for the players, so it's just almost a flavor text. But if they want to fight it, they can, and if they somehow end up in a situation where they're lingering around an area too long or whatever else, then I can have that Iron Golem kind of press the matter and become an actual encounter. But I think we're prepped for Y7, Y8, and Y9. And I guess we can look at the Arboretum also, because they did keep saying they want to head over there. But I can't imagine they'd go there and skip the nearer tower also. But in other words, I'm trying to figure out how much of the next area I need to prep. What's funny is the one I'm prepping right now is the one area I don't think they're going to get to at all, because it's beyond everything else. So maybe it's better to look at the Arboretum first. But we'll look at maybe the first half of this crafting stream. We'll finish up doing the Tower of Divination, and then hopefully we'll have time to look at the Arboretum again and see what other changes we can make. They did a short rest, okay. Hey, Refus. Finished work. Awesome. Start to the weekend then. Have any non-combat social encounters in the city for them? Yeah, well, yeah. I think a trap-like hazard is non-combat. I think that checks the exploration checkbox to me, which is, you know, this hazardous event has happened, you'll have to avoid it somehow, you get to make saves or checks or something and deal with it that way. In terms of social encounters, that's kind of what all their allied NPCs have been for so far. You know, they've been dealing with Valish and Nass. Obviously, they've got Valen with them, so I've been kind of trying to check off those boxes. I did eliminate some of the social NPCs already in the cities, such as the Arcanoloth and the Doppelganger in the prison. I'm skipping all of those, but we'll have a chance to use others. They're just a little bit later in the adventure, and all these areas are going to right now doesn't really have any. But again, I'm okay with that because we've got those starter NPCs. By the way, I don't know if my webcam looks different. We lost power the other day. It just flicked on and off, and for some reason that reset all of my default webcam settings I've been using. So if I look oddly slightly different, that's probably why, because I've been using the same settings forever, and when I first jumped on, they were all set to default. I was like, oh crap, and I tried like fiddling with them real quick. However, the social pillar will hopefully be checked once we get to this Tower of Divination. It is about half combat and half social. And then when we get to the Tower of Necromancy, which is almost entirely social, weirdly. That would be a really, really good one. I plan on actually baking that into the main quest a lot more thoroughly. But this one is the Tower of Divination, and this one does start off a lot more combat heavy. In fact, I'm actually tempted to get rid of the mage and guards because A, we just did that with the Tower of Abjuration, and B, we've got a ton of Nothics. This whole thing is meant to be like a survival round thing with the Nothics, and I feel like it's almost too much combat to throw the mage in on top of them. On the other hand, maybe there's not I need to look and see, are there other good places where they can fight the Magen? We just fought him, but we fought kind of a boring version, which was mostly the Demos Magen in an anti-magic field. But maybe if we have some of the Spellcaster Magens, it would be a lot more interesting, and that would still feel a little different. And I could always shorten the number of rounds. In fact, going 6 rounds is a long, long time for combat for anything other than a boss fight, I think. But maybe I would shorten and just increase the way these rounds work. I'm trying to look for the Nothic. Where's the freaking Nothic? I think it's already in here, so it should be in here already. Go. There's a default Nothic, and then somewhere I added the ones from Expanded Towers of Magic, which was the Nothic Stalker and the Nothic Preeminent. Why are those not on my list? Sure if I put them. Where are you, Nothics? I know I have them in here because I just ran I just ran the Stalker. I don't know where they ended up in here though. I can just search Nothic and see what ended up before. I don't know. Alright, let's just search for Nothics. Fortunately, the way I kind of have to with my overlay, I never updated it to where they lengthened this part of it, so it hides my search bar. So if I want to show the search bar, I need to extend it to here, but then that annoyingly, well, that's not too terrible. Let's see if it blocks the overlay, because I had the scroll bar nicely hidden. Guess we can put it like right there. Not the end of the world. Alright, there they are. I don't know why I didn't see them before. Nothic Stalker. These are both stat blocks from Expanded Towers of Magic, and pretty cool too. They offer you basically it assumes the Nothic is the easy version of the Nothic, and then the Stalker and the Preeminent are kind of the medium and hard versions, which, as somebody running a more difficult version of Ithrin, I vastly appreciate. Because already the outside is supposed to be guarded by Nothics, I believe, before they even get to the fight. Yeah, 3 Nothics are outside, which maybe we could eliminate though. And then I've got dynamic lighting in here to where it's you can see the outside area. I think it's the only tower you can actually see the outside. The only one that a door matters. If I want to keep them, there would be 3 Nothics on the outside. Pretty easily dispatched, especially if the characters can sneak up on them, which is almost a death sentence for me. Although, you know, we had them sneak up on, what was it, like 5 or 6 Nothics, and the players still took forever taking them down. They just didn't quite take full advantage of their surprise round. So maybe it's not quite the death knell, but I've got plenty of Nothics. I can roll at them anyway. Then when they get inside, they have to like break down this door. They fight a bunch of Magen, which also is a lot of combat. And then once they walk inside, they look up at the ceiling, get a premonition of more Nothics pouring into this building. And then they have and then you're supposed to start combat. Basically, you roll for initiative. And then the players have 1 round to basically decide what they want to do, and they can activate all of these various things, these planets that used to be part of an Ori, I believe. And they all give different magical effects, which we did discuss that on Monday's crafting stream, and I think we came up with some good alternatives for a few of them. I believe we're keeping most of them as is. Sun still casts Fireball. Kuliar still casts Fly. Twirl casts Stone Skin. We changed Saloon to be Moonbeam, centered in that space, which should be pretty effective. And then Carpi will cast Tidal Wave, firing towards the center of the room. So all good things, I think. And we need to come up with a way for the players to realize how they work. I think hopefully they'll have Detect Magic on. If not, maybe they'll just sense that these things are magical. And then using Arcana check, I could probably reveal, or maybe they can get a premonition, you know, about what these things will do, like placing your hands and you see this water like coming off or something. The tricky thing is the two evo. I think all the 2 buffs work right when it happens. The Fireball is delayed, so that means the 2 that I'm adding probably should also be delayed by a turn, like 1 round. And that way the players can kind of prep and set up for it, which is pretty neat tactically, I think. It almost reminds me of like Into the Breach and maybe like, I don't know, Midnight Suns right now, where basically the game like telegraphs what enemies are going to do, but in this case it's just telegraphing what environmental hazards are going to do. The players can kind of set that up accordingly, which is neat. So I'm wondering if there's already enough combat where I don't even have to run the Magein part of it, because we've got all of these Nothics here and they want to stream in here. So so the Nothics out here, which I could make those stronger or deal with them in some other way, or the players could choose to get rid of them in another way. Maybe they want to use, like, kind of what Edmund was thinking, was like, hey, let's just use some kind of trick or something to pull them away. We don't have to fight them. And then round 2 is just 3 Nothics and 1 Nothic Stalker. Round 4 actually gives you a couple rounds of dealing with them. 2 Nothics and 2 Nothic Stalkers enter the tower. And round 6, 3 Nothics and a Nothic Preeminent enter the tower. I may just shorten that to where instead of every 2 rounds, it just happens every round, because that would help increase the difficulty here. But maybe keep the numbers relatively the same, and I like using the Preeminent as kind of this, like, Nothic boss. That would be 3 Nothics and a Stalker, which feels pretty good for 5 characters. These guys rush in there. That would be the first wave. The second wave is almost the same thing, except instead of another Nothic, it is a Stalker. And the third wave, actually going back to 3 Nothics, Preeminent. Stalkers have kind of a roguelike ability where they can add their sneak attack damage. And then the Preeminent, remember, I think has more mind powers. Has a Mind Flare ability. I think the Whisper of Paranoia is the one that I added to all the Nothics. It also has Counterspell and Hypnotic Pattern, which are both really deadly spells in the hands of the DM. Mind Flare targets each non-Nothic creature within 30 feet it can see. Each target must succeed on a DC 15 Wiz saving throw, taking 4d8 psychic damage on a failed save. I really wish its Weird Insight was a bonus action, because you just hate using that as an action. I do like that Dan Kahn attempted to give it some extra abilities, which is if it uses the Weird Insight, it causes the target to gain vulnerability to psychic damage, which is kind of nice because they do extra psychic damage on their attacks, and then the Mind Flare would do extra damage. Running Gaze actually does necrotic damage, though. But it takes an action, which sucks. What is the ceiling height in this room? I don't know. It's got to be pretty big, though, because it used to host an Ori. Alright, it's such a player question to ask. What is the ceiling height? I don't know. Oh, there it does say. Starry ceiling 30 feet above. Yeah, it's got to be a big old room for that reason. There is a staircase back here, by the way. You probably can't tell because of the the GM layer fireball effect I've got here. I meant to find a water one. I remember we tried doing that last time and I couldn't quite find a good water blast thing. I wonder if I can find a moonbeam image. see if somebody's made a moonbeam one we can use. Is moonbeam not one word? Oh, there we go. That's good. Right there. Oh, why would you put enough space like that? There we go. It already looks like it's on the GM layer. That's kind of confusing. Wow, and it just disappears in the GM layer. Yikes. All right, and then we want to find... Can we just find an image of tidal wave? That would be handy. Apparently nobody's got... Maybe we could just search wave? From my library. Everything has the word wave in it. That's funny. It's like a piece of water from the ship, which is almost what I need. Wave effect is not, unfortunately, a cone. Like a laser blast. I don't know. Why is it so hard to find just a blast of water? Might have to find like a blue line and use that. Or like, that's not the worst thing to do. Like a little wave symbol like you draw on a map. Oh, that would work if it wasn't, if they weren't all curved. Instant beach map. The overlay. Water. I'm being too picky, I think. I can just take one of these. Yeah, that's all I want is just like have the white there. Perfect. Looks like kind of the seafoam effect. Supposed to be 5-ish? Sure. I forget how big that spell is supposed to be. 30 feet? Wave is up to 30 feet long and 10 feet wide. Stretch it out. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. That's exactly what it looks like. Fortunately, I can't put all these on the layer together because I'm not going to know which one I'm going to actually activate first, being what the players do. So we're going to have to move this one over here. Get confused on myself. Okay. Oh yeah, I think the Magians are just going to actually be too much. In that case, maybe we can just go harder with the Noth. If we just eliminate the Magians completely. Which normally I don't cut combat battles like this, but I think I'd rather just use like a Magian battle like this for a random encounter versus in here, just because we've got so much combat already. So let's just have it be, you've got to fight the Nothics out here. You'd keep it 3, or we could add more. We could add more regular guys. Lingering around. We had one of those stalkers. That. We'll add more Nothics, but again, the players could surprise them, whatever else they want to do. They break into the door. They look at the ceiling. They get the premonition of the Nothics coming in there, and then they get like one round to try to figure out what they're going to do, and then hopefully we can work out the timing of putting them in initiative order versus letting them figure out what the different planet things are going to do as traps they can activate. Because it would be a big bummer if they ignore these things, they get through every round of combat, and then after the fact, they start activating them and getting all these like temporary buffs or effects. And like, oh, okay, I guess this is what we were supposed to do. I kind of need to be a little more forthcoming with how that works. And at the very least, we're going to make this be an every round thing and not every other round. So like round 1, they can still, nothing happens. Round 2 will spawn this group. Round 3 will spawn this group. And round 4 will spawn this group. And at that point, that's going to start being crazy. But I think I'll keep the configurations generally the same. Nothic preeminent is defeated, and remaining living Nothics flee from the tower and trouble the party no more. Nothics also flee if reduced below 10 hit points. That's good to know. So that does help things a little bit. I may actually change that a bit. We'll see. Especially about the Nothic being the load-bearing boss here. Again, this is designed for 9th level players. So let's roll random hit points for everybody. Handy macro. Wow, look at that. You end up with a Nothic who's got 39 hit points. Another one's got 57. I think that's the biggest range I've seen, and it's within the same grouping. That number, oh man, the numbers are going to be insane for these guys too, aren't they? I gotta be... Ones are where? 3, 4. We can have these guys be their own. And 1, 2, 3, 4. Now these will be defeated by the time these come in, so I can start over with the numbers on these guys comfortably. But then I have to continue the number configuration because most likely some of these will not be defeated. So 4, 5. Purple guys 2, purple guy 3. 4, 5, 6. I'm gonna be really sick of these fucking Nothics. 7, 8. Orange guy probably doesn't need a number. Then, once that's done, they're free to go upstairs. And then we've actually got the social part of it. In fact, I need to actually add a green slot onto the map. Oh, it's a social green slot. Green salad. Go, and that is one of the high wizards is straight up still alive, but was transformed into a green slot, which I guess is effectively immortal if it's 2,000 years old. Across the room stands a magnificent telescope, gated towards the glacier wall from a hole in the damaged tower. Peering into the eyepiece of the telescope stands a large frog-like creature wearing an eye-patterned robe. I guess it is supposed to be a robe of eyes. To its left, a small table holds a sphere filled with what appears to be blood and pus. Several intact eyeballs are visibly suspended in the cloudy goop. Frog creature is high diviner APS, now a green slot. Notices the character. She says, leave the tower at once. Check reveals she is growing agitated, but not yet hostile and therefore may be reasoned with. Characters to engage with her must make a successful DC 20 charisma persuasion check to avoid making her hostile. So obviously, unless the players are really down to fight and they just will have gotten through a really lengthy battle, so I imagine they would be not necessarily itching for a fight here. And they would definitely be able to engage with these slots socially. Recently arrived in Ithrin, or indicating a route of escape through the Caves of Hunger. Lowers the DC 15, allows the check to be made with advantage. I guess she's actually looking for a way out. Willing to answer what a few questions she can about Ithrin, but cannot remember much other than the fall of the city and the blue slot attack. The characters ask about Rite of the Arcane Octad. She briefly recalls the purpose of the ritual, but cannot recall the piece that was entrusted to her. She knows it was written in her spellbook. So I need to definitely, because it would be way too powerful to have them have access to an NPC that actually lived at that time, she has to be very limited and half deranged and forgetting a lot of things. Unfortunately, it's going to be even trickier when they actually do run into a straight-up wizard who is not all those things in the form of the High Necromancer, but in that case, he's a ghost that has to possess one of the players and raise his own body, so it'll be a little bit trickier for them to deal with that character. So she knows it was written in her spellbook, which she suspects was jettisoned through the observatory hole, along with countless other notes and objects that were not held down during the craft. Spellbook is enchanted with magical paper and ink such that it never degrades. That's... you gotta have that in there. And then, oh yeah, and if you fight her, you can find a note that basically says that same information, which is important. The notes that she was searching for her spellbook for some time, but a ground search was unsuccessful. You could also mention the fact that she's worried about being outside because of the Iron Golem tramping around and the Nothics, everywhere. Even though she's a Slod, Strong is a green Slod, and she'd still have her own person, part of her personality at least. CR 8, 127 hit points. Hurl Flames. She's got a few spells. Pretty powerful, yeah, regeneration. And speaks with telepathy, okay. Well, I guess it mentioned the fact that she actually speaks Laros instead of body language. Character must learn the following Ether and the Wizards of Ether were so. On a mission to find relics of Astoria. High Diviner APS. Yeah, that part doesn't really matter. I'm actually not doing the whole spindle angle at all. I'm kind of ignoring that. It's a piece of lore that just feels superfluous in my campaign. I have a wild idea. What if a player walk in and see a mage and touch a planet, and they get enlarge cast on them? Oh, so you have the Magen get examples of that? The problem is the planets are supposed to be one-time use things that the players can access. That way they can't abuse them. So if you have a Magen use one, unless if what you're saying is you just essentially throw one away with that effect. They use one that the players are never meant to use in order to get that effect, which is interesting. That's actually a good way of a good version of show don't tell when it comes to DMing. Although I'm already planning on cutting the Nothics. Sorry, the Magen. Alex starts screaming. Magic, once the plan is activated, will be an amazing scene to see. Yeah, that's true. That's definitely. I think it mentions the fact that's what they're attracted to when they stream in here because of the latent magical effect. Let's see, does it actually mention? Are the Nothics come in there? I thought it said something like that. As the Nothics supposed to tower, characters the past 15 or greater knows 3 Nothics when they tower from the shadows. If the characters move to confront the Nothics, they scatter out of sight and resume their watch shortly after. Reasons they don't understand. Oh, that's interesting. I haven't played the Nothics personality-wise like that before, where they would actually be like kind of fearful and scatter away, but still like observing it from the shadows. Okay, that's actually a better way to do it than actually having to just fight the Nothics outside of the gate then. I mean, they could still choose to run and engage them, but I like that because that teases the fact that the Nothics are going to come in and attack them in waves. Having them like kind of watching it and leer, from a distance to where the players will be able to notice them, but maybe not necessarily like just loitering around like dumbasses outside. For Nothics, for reasons they don't understand, the Nothics are drawn to the powerful magic energies of the Tower of Divination, specifically the arcane telescope at the top. Yes, ma'am. Need a yogurt. Well, how about you just keep eating your snacks and we'll do lunch here in a second, okay? Yeah. You don't need a pre-yogurt lunch or a pre-lunch yogurt. Tasty flesh of the party in their proximity to the tower presents an irresistible temptation to the Nothics. And then the door is bolted shut so they can't get in. Okay. Maybe you could also do it where there are Nothics like clawing at the door trying to get in. And then when the players approach, I guess you could still give them a surprise round. Basically, have them trying to get into the tower, so clearly the Nothics are interested in it. And maybe when they do combat, some of the Nothics flee and others turn to attack, but then when they get reduced, they can still flee. We could still probably keep it as a mini combat, but really not being able to test them like we would the full combat encounter. You found a yogurt pouch? Oh, you little turd. Alright, fine. You're welcome. It's still alive. APS can explain that the telescope is a powerful artifact. When using a particular lens, the viewer can cast an enhanced form of the arcane eye spell that can be cast at any range within sight Travel 1,000 feet per minute. You can see in total darkness spells with creatures range 120 feet. Yeah, that spell is crazy powerful. Another spell that's very useful in this situation where it's a lost city that you wouldn't be able to get inside any of the buildings. Well, I mean, half of them are ruins, so I guess you could. The telescope doesn't work like a telescope. It works like an arcane eye spell. Can you use a telescope to find the spell book? DC 25 investigation or DC 25 perception check to successfully locate the spell book. Each check takes approximately 1 minute to attempt the search, and a character can repeat the check on a failure. For each minute of searching, the DC decreases by 3 as the character covers more ground with the arcane eye spell. For a successful check, the character spies a grayish blue bound book etched with the symbol of divination. Once located, retrieving the spell book can be done on foot. So this is another interesting one because it sends the party to another location, which I just did with Tower of Abjuration. The only bad thing is one of these suggested ones is literally what they have to do with the Tower of Abjuration, the branch of the Netherrook and the Arboretum, which feels really dumb to, especially because they're probably already going to be having done the Arboretum before they make it here. I won't be using that location. The other ones they recommend are the Rubble at the Bazaar of the Bazaar, or Teetering on the Edge of the Pit at the Wellspring of Answers. Both of those could work for me. Both of them are fairly close to where the tower is, too. It's not like the players have to go across the whole city. I mean, Y12 and Y13 are literally right next to it. Y12 is right here to where it's like, it's a cool reason for them to go there to this pit. But, like, why couldn't the green slot have found it and reached there before? In, like, 2,000 years she's been searching around. Like, come on. Actually, I take it back. I don't think she's been searching for the book this whole time, even though she should have been. I think she's been searching for a way out by, like, combing through this glacier, I think is the idea. The Bazaar would actually be a little bit better. It's supposed to be in Rubble, and I think that's where the Iron Giant has been searching around. In fact, that may be a great excuse to have combat with the Iron Golem, as they have to spend like a second searching around that area. Maybe the Golem spots them or something. Probably the only notable region. I forget what Y14 is. That one real quick. The Hall of Silk. Oh, that's right, the Phase Spider one. Yeah, they can dress up. I mean, the other option is it's just sitting out somewhere and you can have one of those random encounters. One of the Magen Guard. It's a store, one of the few stores I can just check into. And there's an interesting side effect here. So every minute you use it, you have to make a DC 8 con save. On a failed save, I could obviously raise that because it's doing for higher levels. On a failed save, the creature takes 3d6 piercing damage, and its eye is magically plucked from the socket, sucked into the telescope's eyepiece, and deposited into the sphere next to it. The creature must repeat the saving throw after each subsequent minute of use. Oh, and the DC increases by 2 for every minute after the first. So there's a couple different modifying DCs you have to keep track of here. The DC for initially making the skill check, which takes 1 minute, but then after you use it, so you get, okay, so if I'm looking at this correctly, you use it, you have to make a DC 25 investigation or perception check. Afterwards, whether you succeed or fail, you have to make a DC 8 con save. Now, if you had, or lose an eye, if you failed that DC 25 check, you can attempt it again, but the DC lowers by 3 for the check. However, the con save increases by 2. So now it's a DC 22 check, but a DC 10 con save. That's actually scaled pretty brutally. Because, I mean, a 25 is certainly not a gimme, even for my players. 22 also. Then it would go down to 19, and then 16. And then this would go up from 10 to 12 to 14 for con saves. The DC resets after a creature has completed a long rest or after it loses one of its eyes. Okay, so it does give that to you. And then because of APS, because of her slot regeneration, she's able to regrow her lost eyes as she's used the telescope. That's really cool. It's a fun, nasty thing. I don't think the players may have access to Greater Restoration through some kind of charm or something that I can think of, but they don't certainly have, like, I don't think infinite casts of it. Hilarious to have them find the spellbook first, then find out from the slaw that it is one of the keys. That's true, but it's one of those where, like an RPG video game where they give you the quest and one of your responses is like, I've already found this thing, and the player's like, oh, thank you for turning this in. Because video games have to like account for that if you find the object they're looking for. In this case, it would be, I think, dissatisfying because then they literally would not have to engage with the telescope part at all. And I think that is a great thing because they would not know that's coming. The fact that somebody could lose an eye immediately is just awesomely gruesome, and I really want to be able to do that. And thankfully, the way it's set up is that they're most likely going to make it to this tower before exploring this side of the city, which means I can easily place the book probably somewhere around Y13, because I believe it's supposed to be kind of an open air area, and I could even turn that into kind of a rubble battlefield with maybe Magen lingering around, or farm incursions, or do something to where clearly it's not just a go pick it up kind of thing. What was 16? I know 15 I'm turning... And 15 was the observatory. So before the tower, I don't even remember what the original one is, to be honest with you. But the observatory is a separate area. It's here at Y15. This adventure puts the observatory in the Tower of Divination, which is clever as hell. And then it allows the observatory to be the Tower of Necromancy, so that you don't have to use the rubble. In fact, that's the other location you could use, is have it be in this huge torn apart rubble area here at Y18. And thus I could make an excuse to use that area, which normally is nothing, I guess. I'm trying to remember what Y16 is. Oh, the menagerie. Bunch of crazy creatures. I don't think there's actually creatures in here, though. It's just a way to make pets. Yeah, it's like a weird Pokeball machine, almost. Feels like a wasted opportunity to not have like a zoo, but on the other hand, like any creatures would be long since dead, so unless you do some kind of undead thing. This allows them to make their own little pet creatures. Kind of goofy, and what does it say? It requires 80 hit points of blood? Like, damn. I think, you know what this looks like on the map? This looks like an aviary. I think maybe I need to look up some kind of creepy flying creatures I could have in here, but somehow make it so they've survived for 2,000 years, or else go with an undead angle. I don't know. And also, what excuse would the players have to go in here? The Arcane Eye spell does not, it lets you see basically everything, but you can't open doors, so you'd have to be able to get in through cracks or something. But maybe with the eye, you could like see into the aviary and see like the book laying in there. That might be an interesting excuse. And that would be an excuse to go in there if I wanted to, again, turn another area into like, okay, now we need a battle map. Now we need all these things. And I'm starting to put probably too much content in here. Yeah, Zoo of Just Bones. That's kind of the problem, is like what kind of creatures would still be in this 2,000-year-old city? Or maybe it would just be like the security system they have to deal with or something. I don't know. Because none of it would make, if it was just like, manticores or something, like that's a cool idea. I think manticores are somewhat intelligent. It would be unethical to zoo those creatures. But it doesn't make any sense that they'd be able to survive for literally 2,000 years since when this place crashed. I mean, there's like, God, even after 100 years, things would be crazy in there, right? It'd be generations, and I can't even fathom being that close in ecosystem. The inbreeding alone would kill. Those poor creatures would be like just mutants of nastiness. I mean, you could argue that, magical energies, maybe they preserved. Like, I could come up with some kind of DM bullshit reason for why there's still a zoo in there, but I'm kind of liking that idea more. Stupid city, I like it so much, I keep wanting to make new content for it and just give myself more work and slow the player's progress down, but damn it if it's not a cool place. Or, like I said, we use like the rubble in Y18, or I think 13. The bazaar is also basically just ruined. Its interior is a worn of mangled shop fronts crushed by chunks of ice and stone. Most of the wares become worthless. Everything else has been destroyed. Hi, sweetheart. I see you. And that's got the headless golem, but I think... I guess you could still use a headless golem in there. I've got the real golem also patrolling around. And I could have its patrol include the Bazaar if I wanted to, or maybe another golem, I don't know. Then it almost becomes a skill challenge. It almost becomes a skill challenge if the players are like really low level and they really can't fuck with the Iron Golem, but... And I slightly changed up by making a Shardling Golem. But honestly, you know, yeah, Iron Golems are strong, but at level 13, like, players are also pretty damn strong. Skeletal Man... well, that's... Hey, Michael. That's the other angle, is you go with undead, basically. Whatever creatures were here are now have been turned into undead versions of themselves, so... In which case, yeah, that could be interesting. We don't have any real clerics or paladins that can take advantage of undead slaying. A troll in a cage and carnivores have unlimited food supply in the zoo. That is fucked up. Because the regeneration. That is really dark. Holy crap. How does that work? If you cut off a troll's, I feel like this is the bag of tricks argument. Like, could you eat an animal summoned from the bag of tricks, and would that sustain you? Versus when it dies, it disappears. But a troll arm, would you be able to just constantly feed off of that? This is fucking grisly. This is like some Walking Dead shit. You'd be able to feed off of that infinitely. That's really dark, and yet I don't know how where the morals were with the Netherese wizards. That's freaking hilarious. Alright, we've only got about 15 minutes left in the crafting stream, so I think we need to go back to talk about the Arboretum. So, the Tower of Divination is essentially done, right? Like the Slod, it's just a social encounter, and that awesomeness with the telescope where they have to search for the thing, and it's basically just I actually like the way it's not them literally having to search for it, it's you making skill checks and having to make saves from having your eye plucked out. All that is very, very cool. And it's to where they don't even get the right of the Octad until they get that spell book. So, unfortunately for the players, like, you complete this place, but then not until you get the spell book do you actually get the thing that you need from there. Oh yeah, she also wears a robe of eyes. Doesn't mention how the fact that players can get that. Maybe they have to kill her for it. I guess that'd always be an option if they wanted to. But I really like the way that the divination comes together. I think combining the observatory... This is all from, again, Expanded Towers of Magic. I love combining the observatory with the what's the word for, not a conservatory? Is it? I don't know. I guess a planetarium is what it would be. With having the 3D space of the solar system and things, with the traps and then the Nothic fights and all that is just fabulous. So I really like this area a lot, and hopefully, assuming we can get it right with the timing of the players kind of having an inkling that all of these things have magical effects that can operate, and figuring them out during the context of this wave-based battle with a bunch of Nothics, I think it'll work well. And I think I'm going to just skip the actual Magians in here, even though you'd think with my high-level players I should test them more. I just think that it's a lot of combat, and we're going to have plenty of combat with the Nothics. The Magians just kind of add too much to it. Plus, the Magians, as I mentioned before, have that awkward timing where the players might accidentally set off one of these traps to fight the Magians, in which case I think it would be very dissatisfying versus the upcoming Nothic fight they have. So I'm okay with skipping the Magians in here, and we'll use them in other places, I think. And honestly, my players have done a great job of not abusing long rests too much, where that's kind of the balance for me, is I don't necessarily even have to make things super hard every time to up the balance. They just have kind of an implicit agreement to not long rest very often, which is great because they don't realize they might have to make saves against the Arcane Blight. The Netherese had nearly 0 ethics. They made sentient weapons out of their generals against their will. They bound dragons to their will. Okay. Then we could just have a troll cage in there with some creatures feeding on it. That would actually be really dark and messed up. Hi, sweetheart. Got all your snacks, I see. It is almost lunchtime, I promise. Yeah. Alright, sorry, I'm hearing that garbage truck and I'm yelling at my wife to make sure we took the trash out earlier. I was like, wait, I didn't do that. Oh, I guess she did that. Okay. All right. The Arboretum is a place that they have to go because that is part of the main quest, as written in the Expanded Towers of Magic, because they need to get the. No, actually, that's actually part of the base book. Is they have to craft a wand from the Nether Oak, and one thing I've still trying to figure out is, I've got this map set up. As written, the players could basically either roll a single stealth check or a single persuasion check to get the wood that they need from the oak without awakening it. It's supposed to be asleep. Obviously, one change I could make is that it's not asleep. It's very aware of what's going on. I could also make it almost more of a dungeon crawl where, like, even when they first enter, you've got enemies that spawn. I could use this carnivorous sod to attack them even as they enter before they do anything, just as a way to kind of soften them up a little bit. Because the thing is, if it's a social check, they're going to win the social check. But maybe it's a series. Maybe they have to do something. It says only if it believes they intend to perform nefarious magic with it, which they wouldn't. Also, is the Nether Oak wand supposed to be a special item? I don't think it is. And the weird thing is there's no notes anywhere about how to actually make it into a wand. It just says here's how to get the wood. How do you turn a wood into the wand? In which case that would probably be well, we could borrow what we're gonna do with Tower of Divination and turn it into kind of a wave-based thing and have it be like, okay, you have to craft the magic from the wand. And maybe that requires like the heart of a treant or something. And then we could start spawning bad guys. But maybe if they sweet talk the Nether Oak, maybe the Nether Oak won't join in the battle directly. Maybe you could just use spells. Okay, so I'm starting to come up with something here. Today's menu is troll toast. After we have some troll soup, then later some troll soup. That's so, you guys are loving this troll in a cage angle. I mean, I'm considering it. This is obviously weeks from now when we actually get to that part, but I'm, what's gonna, all of this is gonna hinge on the fact if I can find a good map that would be the menagerie map. But I'm picturing something like an aviary. It looks like an aviary, right, with like the dome thing, and I like the idea of it being like a zoo type location. If I can find a good map, then I could be talked into it. I'm also falling down the trap of turning every other building on Etherin into its own like little dungeon map of things going on. And that one I could make important by having the Tower of Divination's spellbook in there, which means it basically works the exact same as the Arboretum, where like, oh, this was an optional location, but now it's you have to do this location in order to actually do the thing for the main quest. I recently watched one video discussing a creature called a Boneyard. It'd be cool in there. Oh, that sounds familiar, actually. Is it literally called Boneyard? I search bone, I'm gonna end up with way too many monsters, aren't I? I remember there was something that was like a big pile of bone, a bone swarm maybe might be one. I don't remember what it's called. There's a couple good ideas like that though. One of them wasn't Dragon Bone Golem. I don't know. There was something like that. It was a pile of bones, and it looked like there was like the head of the bones was almost like a snaky looking thing. Or what exactly it was called. Boneyard is not showing up on here. Maybe it wasn't that one. But there are some cool ideas. The Bone Colossus. I mean, you could definitely, if you want to go the undead angle, there's certainly some good stuff to go on here. And it would actually be surprisingly refreshing, because I haven't used undead very much in this campaign. Despite it being like the Frozen North and having those, I'll call it cold light walkers. So what if you could still get the piece of the wood you needed to make the wand, They must craft a wand from the wood of this tree. It literally never says. It feels like such a weird oversight that like here's how to get the wood, but then it never mentions how you actually craft the wand. The nether oak is easily angered and uproots itself if driven to combat. But maybe I like the fact that persuasion doesn't let you just solve the entire combat encounter. Instead, it just, which I think is a fun reward for persuasion, is that instead of saying like, oh, you just Jedi mind tricked everybody, because that's not what persuasion should be. Instead, you might persuade the nether oak to just not, like, hey, maybe you stand down, but then all the other minions will still fight. Because on this map, I've got a pair of treants, basically 2 of the trees animate as treants. And I've got a bunch of carnivorous sod. I could even add some blights in there if I wanted to, which would be pretty appropriate. Just have it be a bunch of plant creatures. Man, Aether's so much fun because you get all these different like little miniature biomes of things you get to play with. I just love this city. Right, a few crap. So like what, Arcana checks or something? There's even a cute little table on this map that's like kind of designed to craft the wands, which I love. You can have them go here and like make a series of checks. But I like the idea that maybe they need a certain ingredient, like the heart of a treant or something, in order to make it. And then in addition to the crafting process, and maybe the crafting process also takes like 3 successful checks, but I put them in combat, and then every round it like upsets, you know, various creatures who go to attack them. So you've got one player whose basically whole job is just to succeed on these checks for crafting the wand, and that's doing various things, but it's like drawing magical energies from various creatures, and that's causing them to attack. So it's kind of another wave-based survival mode while they craft the damn thing. And then depending on how they talk to the nether oak, that might determine like what its actions are. Like if they totally piss it off, then it could just be fully involved in combat. If they mostly placate it, it might cast an occasional supportive spell. And if they really manage to convince it, then maybe it won't act. It just completely stands down and just kind of observes things happening while the minions themselves attack. So I think that's actually a better method, in which case I would love to hear suggestions for other plant-based creatures that would still be in here. As I mentioned, I've got just straight-up treants, which I think I've actually made smaller just to make the nether oak look that much more impressive. I think they're normally supposed to be bigger than this instead of the large size. But maybe they're just smaller trees. Yeah, these are considered huge. I guess each tree could also animate other trees. That gets crazy, actually. If you have multiple trees around, can't they just all animate each other? So if you have a bunch of trees, correct me if I'm wrong, but couldn't one... Oh, and they only... Okay, it says they only have the slam action option. I need to finish reading it. Okay. So they actually can't just do a domino chain of animate trees. That makes sense. But I would allow the nether oak would not animate the trees, or maybe it's placated and the other trees are just already treants and they summon, in which case they could animate other trees. I've got the carnivorous sod, which is just fun. It's just grass that can pop up and attack. And I think the other one I would think of would be the twig blights, basically, or whatever, vine blight, whatever equivalent. Assassin vines, I guess, are really strong and powerful too. I don't see this place being kind of a viney jungle type area. It's more of a forest. I don't know how appropriate the assassin vine would be, but having just a bunch of different kinds of plant creatures would be pretty appropriate. And then maybe once you finish crafting the wand, you could do a fun, you know, video game-esque thing where like, okay, and then all the creatures just stand down, and you've got and then with that wand's power, it just like sends out a shockwave that stands all the creatures down, and the Keeper of the Grove just kind of shrugs. And I definitely want to play it like it's a huge dick too. It's just an asshole who understands as part of the process, but actually absolutely hates people, goes in here and assumes they don't deserve the power of the wands and all this stuff. So to where maybe even goad the players into like wanting to attack and strike the nether oak specifically, in which case it will uproot and join in the battle. Animated tree is not a tree. Yes, thank you for clarifying. The players have any tool proficiencies? I don't know. I assume Edmund does. It's such an underdeveloped part of 5e, or the whole tool proficiencies thing. Anyway, Celeste has an herbalism kit that actually may come in handy for being here. I would assume I would just not even necessarily do a tool proficiency. I guess it depends. Edmund is the man. He's got thieves' tools, tinker's tools, and alchemist supplies, and a disguise kit. I don't know what would be relevant to wandcraft. That'd be considered a tinker's tools. But that would be a fun excuse to break out one of those skill checks, I guess. Players don't usually get a chance to do that. Barbarian has no tool proficiencies. One of the players must be concentrated to make the wand, and the other players must defend a wand maker from the plant. Yeah, I mean, I guess you could do concentration. I was literally thinking the wand maker just had to make a check every round, in order to, so that they still have something to do on their turn. And then once they succeed at, like, let's say 3 times or something, which that could be a long combat session if they fail. Hopefully other players have ways of, with between what is it, Flash of Genius and Bardic Inspiration, like they should be able to complete a lot of the checks, I feel like. But I like the idea of having a player furiously crafting a magical thing while the other players have to defend them. Thimbleweed is only proficient with a horn. I imagine it's got to be Edmund making the wand. Like, he's a fucking artificer. Like, that's what they do. Robin is, only disguise kit. And so, yeah, probably Tinker's Tools, I think, would be appropriate for wand making, and that should make Edmund pretty happy about having to do that. And in that, I think that's a good solution. So instead of, I mean, obviously they still have to, so I could just keep the Nether Oak basically with its eyes closed, but whenever they approach, it would start speaking to them. I guess that discounts the stealth angle, but they could still stealthily grab the wand while they're speaking to it. And then it would, we'd have a fun little social scene there. I'm trying to debate on if we want to even have a combat when they first enter here or not. Probably not. Let's lure them in and talk to them. And then when they're actually crafting the wand, I may move this treant over here. Go. And that could be, I could even do it like the Tower of Divination, where, like, round 1 it's these creatures, round 2 it's these creatures, which could be pretty fun. Like round 1, a bunch of carnivorous sod rises up out of the ground, in which case maybe we, instead of defending the Oak Keeper, we actually want to defend this thing. So I should put the grass bits around here. Rise up out of the grass. 5 of these guys around the area can rise up. So like round 1, the sod arrives. Round 2, you could have the treants animate. And then, I don't know, round 3, something else happens. Come up with some other creature that gets spawned. And that would probably be enough. And then if the players actually do, he straight up fails 1 check, we'd have to keep going in more rounds, but maybe I don't spawn any new creatures. Or maybe I do, knowing that the players don't have to actually fight anything else. I don't know whether to use these as animated trees or as actual true treants themselves. Probably just the trees. They just have the slam attack. Maybe you could have just effects happen, like the Keeper. She doesn't do it, but like the entangle spell does happen. So I could like do the entangling plants thing on round 3 to try to restrain everybody. Some of their abilities he does have calling, conjure animals. Poison Spray, Thorn Whip. I'm going to almost assume they talk the Keeper down with their honeyed tongue of Valravn to not have her involved in combat, but just in case, I need to be aware of that stat block. But I like that idea of having to actually craft the wand as part of the challenge here, and have that be kind of a survival, protect the player while they're doing the thing. I think that's a pretty fun, memorable case for them to do. It's so weird that I had to come up with rules for this. It feels like such a bizarre oversight that, like, they must craft a wand from the wood of this tree. They can get the wand this way and this way, but there's nothing about like how to actually make it into a wand after that. So kind of weird. All right, we did a lot of good progress for this crafting session, but I think that is going to end it for today. If you enjoy the content, please do check out patreon.com/RogueWatson. Shouts to Platinum patrons Joe, Will, Thomas, Stan, William, Brandon, Genocider, David, Eclectic Roleplay Roll, Christopher, Brian, William, David, Corey, Koa1337, Matthew, Big Nut, John, Chris, Scott, Gene, and Eric. And gold patrons RPG, Papercrafts, Pretty Boy, and Yuma, Marcus, Deadlers Allowance, Sam, Lumpy Spuds, Jerome, Nathan, Fast, Like a Tortoise, Scott, Refus, Caroline, and William. Thank you all very much for your support. If you are a Platinum patron who has signed up for the Patreon D&D game, I will see you tonight. And for the rest of you, I will see you tomorrow. Or D&D.